What's up, y'all? I'm here on the pod with Sachin Binny.
Yes.
Sachin Binny. So we're friends. We met in 2020, um, and you've written. You sent me a piece you wrote about the challenges of building infrastructure and the costs associated with it. How would you summarize that piece?
Yeah. So the to give some background, um, I I mean I've been long fascinated with high-speed rail, probably the same as you, and I got to experience it when I went to Japan, and there are all these high-speed rail projects that are supposed to happen in the U.S. that have never taken off. So there's the Dallas Houston one. There's the California one, which they've already spent billions of dollars, but they've not like they haven't even started building anything yet. So I wanted to sort of learn more about why it takes so long, and also why are some countries much better at building high-speed rail type infrastructure versus some other countries. And so that's how I started sort of researching and reading more for that for the essay that I sent you, and the sort of central conclusion, or not conclusion, like takeaway for me was that a lot of times these projects need an upfront amount of certainty about the future. Most of these projects take, at least 5 to 10 years, even if it's like a really efficient project. Like even China's high-speed rail, like China now has the longest and most expansive high-speed rail network in the world. They started it in 2003, but I think the first trains did not run until 2009, 2010. So even in a highly efficient system, it takes a while, and you need to provide some certainty about the future for the project to be successful. So certainty in terms of like the routes being fixed, certainty in terms of knowing what kind of problems to anticipate, and when there is that lack of certainty, you get projects like the California High Speed Rail or the British HS2, which just got it got shortened to a much shorter distance about 2 years ago, because there's a lot of political uncertainty, because nobody can agree on the route or like how much money to spend, and and also there's uncertainty around like regulation, and if you're able to commit to the route that is planned because of environmental regulation or
Land property.
land, yeah, or those. So yeah, that's sort of and the question I came away with was like, how do you do that in a democratic country? How do you how do you sort of get certainty about the future in a democratic country?
Yeah, that's actually interesting. I don't. I wonder to what degree China, as a sort of like an autocracy, um, is able to like. I don't know. I haven't deep dived into high speed rail in China. I should. It's a little embarrassing that I haven't, but I just haven't been there. I tend to focus on places that I've been, and I wonder like, do they literally just have like eminent domain over like whatever they want and like any property they can seize, and like it's just that simple. And so it's like if they draw a line on the map, it's like we're building this here no matter what. Did you look into that at all?
I did try to look into the land acquisition stuff, and I think it is, yeah, much more complex and different than I don't think it's as simple as like the government sort of takes your land away, but also there is much more sort of like a it's almost like a decision is made that we are going to make this work, and uh, we are sort of going to find a way to make it work. And so, for example, one of the things that made high-speed rail work was um, in 2003, they sort of made this master plan of the route that they wanted to complete in like the next 5-10 years. And once they built that route, they so at that point, China still had a lot of budget airlines, just like we have in the US. And what they did was, for some of the main routes in which the high-speed rail was running, they made it a rule that the airlines could not change the prices uh, in comparison with in competition with the high-speed rail. So essentially, they sort of had price control,
So they couldn't drop the price?
so they couldn't drop the price.
Okay.
So they couldn't directly compete with high-speed rail by suddenly making it cheaper. Um, and so basically the government sort of like incentivized with sort of a strong hand that people have to adopt high-speed rail and prevented the airlines from competing fairly. Now that's not something that would happen in a sort of free market system, and and I think there are a lot of things like that have happened. So I think it's not full on autocracy, but it's not. Yeah, it's a bit more complex, I guess, and so yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, one thing you hear from anti transit people here in the US actually is you will hear, well, we have airplanes, you know. Now I'm pretty sure if you do the math and like the capacity of and cost of planes versus trains, like I don't think it works out particularly well for planes for, you know, distances that make sense, right? Like I'm sure across the United States, plane probably makes a lot more sense. But for, you know, Houston to Dallas or Austin to San Antonio, like these are distances where a train could
Yeah,
compete.
yeah, that is interesting. Cause, and I want to know your take on this as well, because I looked into this for the California high-speed rail, sort of how much time would it take for, because the route from San Francisco to LA, it's not flat like it's in Texas. It's like pretty hilly, so it's the expenses incurred would be higher, plus the carbon expenditure while building would also be pretty high. So I looked, sort of did like rough ChatGPT math of comparing like flights versus high-speed trains, how much time it would take for the train to pay off its carbon expenditure. And I think the amount was something like, the number of years was something like 10 years. So 10 years after a high-speed rail is built, the carbon expenditure is paid off, and then from there on, it's a much better proposition compared to planes. But the other interesting thing that I found was that I was looking at basically high-speed rail in Japan, and in a lot of places that have high-speed rail, they sort of spend time on making other forms of transit good as well. So one interesting thing that I sort of accidentally stumbled on was in the route between Tokyo and Osaka, there are also planes, and Boeing has a special version of their 747 Dreamliner called the Boeing 747R, which is specific to the Japanese markets,
Okay.
where they adopted they took a wide body 747 Dreamliner, which can fill like I think 500 people or something, and they adopted it for a shorter route, so like less fuel, and that is much more efficient than the sort of the the 737 Max that you would run between two American cities that are close by, or like the other 737s. So they're basically transiting like large number of people on like these specifically built out Dreamliners.
Sure.
So yeah, I guess my point is I think you need like you need a diversity of transit, and like when you're investing, you want to invest in sort of multiple uh, transit forms.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that comes up again and again in these conversations with in America is like nobody's trying to take away planes. There's no future in which there's no planes. There's no future in which there's no cars, at least no near future, right? Maybe in 50 years, like maybe 90% of cars are robots or whatever. But like realistically, like we're gonna have cars. Yeah, it's just about a diversity. I don't know what the competition is between a plane and a train in Japan. I don't know who chooses to fly to Osaka versus take a train from Tokyo to Osaka. That's actually interesting. It has not really a thought that's occurred to me.
Yeah, I think it was because of the it started during the Japanese economic boom of like the 80s. So I think there were a lot of like business people transiting at that time, and probably it's the service has still remained, and but I don't think anything new has been done there. Like I don't think they have new types of planes or anything on their route, because since sort of like the Japanese stagflation era of the 90s. So I think it was sort of like a you've heard this phrase, low interest rate phenomena. I think it was a similar sort of like low.
Well, why does it still happen? I guess.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to see the time, like flight time. I'm guessing plane might be a little faster, maybe.
Yeah.
Even that's a little hard to believe, but I don't know. Also, maybe TSA and stuff is not as bad in Japan. I can't recall from when I was there.
yeah,
I think they have pretty much the same stuff. But it's something that comes up a lot when you talk about this stuff, and I agree with, is like it's just more pleasant to be on a train. I don't know about you, but there's just something far less stressful about like getting into a train and you know arriving at my destination. You have like a little bit more space. Usually you arrive like in the downtown area of a destination. So I'm always thinking about like these people that are so anti train, like to what degree is it that they just haven't been exposed to it enough? Like I'm always wondering like how much of what we do is just governed by what we believe is possible, and how much of our society is just providing friction because they don't think something is possible. Like that's a kind of a fascinating subject to me. It's not really in your paper, but it's something that I return to a lot because I can't help but believe that if all Texans thought, you know, a train from Dallas to Houston was good and possible, like it would have already happened. But what happens is you've got these like weird cultural, like I don't even know if they're structural, you know, things that are adding friction that make it difficult, and you know it arises in the form of like the Texas Central Railway, in the form of you know farmers that are like, oh, I don't want to give up my land or whatever. But then they get state backing from Attorney General Ken Paxton, who comes in and he's like, well, I'm going to help you guys sue this into oblivion. And then you get in Austin, you've got like our light rail project, which is like it's facing the same headways. I think that Attorney General Ken Paxton also signed on to some lawsuits against it, and then you've got local NIMBYs who are suing it. And like I always just wonder how much of it is cultural versus how much of it is structural.
yeah. I think on the structural part, at least, there is, I guess more on the cultural part, there's a much lower trust of government and bureaucracy in the US. And I think that makes it pretty hard to sort of build such these projects that one have like really long timelines and require a lot of commitment. And some of the trust is
I can get in my car today.
yeah, and some of the trust is like I mean, it's lack of trust is understandable because the track record of projects have been pretty poor. Or the I guess the other thing is the good projects don't really get a lot of attention either. Like nobody talks about the Seattle light rail unless you're living in Seattle or they're like you. So like they're interested in
Well, and even then, they'll see the things they don't like. They saw Chaz on or on Fox News or whatever, and they think that And I'm a big pro public safety guy. I'm like, put cops on the fucking trains. I don't care. I'm a anti-camping. Like, I really don't think we should be having, as much as I feel for homeless people, I don't really think they should be able to just like set up camp anywhere and like just dominate public space. So I agree with all that. But like, if you're somebody from afar who just wants to be skeptical, you'll have all the tools available to be skeptical. And it does feel like a self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like, we don't believe government can do things. Therefore, we put up all these obstacles so that government can't do things. And then government does a bad job at doing things. And then we're like, look, government can't do things. And like, I'm not by no means like a communist or like a government should do everything guy. But it's like, we have plenty of examples in the world that we can point to of like governments doing things. So it's like, it's possible.
yeah. I guess the model for that is interesting. It just reminds me of, on one end you have sort of like the sort of Western democratic impasse in some way of like it's hard to build trains, it's hard to build any kind of infrastructure. It takes a long time. It seems extremely inefficient. And then on the other end, you have sort of like the autocratic more, I would say, authoritarian way of like building such infrastructure, which also has its own sort of drawbacks. Like I remember reading a study, I forgot the exact name, but it was something like basically authoritarian regimes have straighter roads because you are able to sort of build whatever you want without any sort of
Cut out for like
yeah
somebody's mansion or
and
it's probably not a mansion, but something.
or something important. It might be a library, mansion, whatever, a farm. While and so like that's the other end of the spectrum, which is also like sort of dystopian and like unfortunate. And
How dystopian is it though, really, for a farm to get split in half between Dallas and Houston? You know what's dystopian is driving between Dallas and Houston. I've done it many times, and for somebody like me, I always just been the guy that, like, if I have to drive further than an hour, like, or 2 hours maybe, like, I'm falling asleep. I'm going to fall asleep. And so, like, what I end up having to do is I got to pull over at Buc-ee's and take a nap. And so Buc-ee's is like where I take a shit and I take a nap. And that is to me a little bit dystopian. And I really had trouble with like, one of the icons of Texas being Buc-ee's, because to me it's like Buc-ee's is not really something to celebrate. I will say though, I was in New England recently.
I like Buc-ee's.
I like it. Like, don't get me wrong. I was in New England recently and it gave me an appreciation for it because we were doing a little road trip and like I had to take shit, all right? Just straight up. And we stopped at this place. I looked up, I actually asked ChatGPT, I was like, what is New England equivalent of Buc-ee's? And then it was like, well, they don't really have one, but there's like this place. And like I looked it up and we went there in New Hampshire and we pulled up and there were like, a lot of gas pumps for New Hampshire, which was like 12, right? And then you walk in and there's like only one bathroom. And we go in and the bathroom was like pretty gross. It was fine. And then I go in, and then like I can hear people like knocking and like trying to get in, and then like the guy is like, "All right, I'll let you into the secret bathroom in the back." Like my point being is like Bucky's is good for the system that we have, which is driving everywhere, and there's good corn syrup filled snacks there, but. You know, if you compare Bucky's to like the central station in Leipzig, or even like a mid-sized German city, it's like that's a much more, you know, I don't want to be all trad or whatever, but like that is a much nicer aesthetic experience.
That's true. Um, but
But all these trad people are always talking about aesthetics, like they care so much about aesthetics, and it's like there ain't nothing aesthetic about a demonic giant beaver and 500 gas pumps. Okay, not beautiful. I'm sorry. If you were doing that TikTok thing where they're like exploring India until it's ugly, like have you seen these before?
no.
No, you're not as brain rot as me, but like there's this girl who has like 1 million followers on TikTok, and literally all she does is explore countries until they're ugly. And like she'll go to the Maldives, and she'll go to like 10 places before it's ugly.
Yeah.
And then I'm pretty sure if you were like, oh, exploring Texas until it's ugly, and you clicked on a Bucky's, like, are you gonna be like, oh, this is beautiful? No.
No, I think for somebody who has never been to the United States, there's a certain cosmic horror about seeing a huge gas station
Yes.
with 100 gas pumps.
It's Lovecraftian.
Yes, it is Lovecraftian, and there is a beauty in that too. Which is why all the immigrants take pictures with the Bucky's beaver.
Yeah, and it's cool, but like imagine an alternate universe where we have like a Waco station, and it's like beautiful, and there's like you know, some artisans are making actually good barbecue there, and like you know, Texas has all these like cool cultural elements that we could actually celebrate in like a dignified way, and we don't.
That's true. It is true that if Texas was more dense, you would have had probably more more exchange of essentially more exchange of ideas, and like more exchange of different types of experiments in like cuisine and stuff. You know, like if you take a place like Houston, where I lived for a while, and you basically grew up there, and it's, you know, it's such a diverse place with like so much great food from all over the world, but at the same time it's also very insular, and um, the main reason for the insularity is that you have to like drive everywhere, and like you don't see a lot of people on the streets, and like essentially if you had a more of a mass transit culture, then you are more likely to sort of come across like cuisines that you would not otherwise come across unless you looked it up in Google Maps, and there's probably like like more faster,
Or serendipity.
more serendipity, and probably that explains why, you know, cities like Tokyo and Mexico City have such a big like food culture, like so much like experiments and innovation happening in like food and stuff.
Well, to be fair, I mean, wouldn't you say Houston and Dallas in particular? You know, it's funny. There's a sidebar. Did you pay attention at all to like the Michelin stuff when it happened?
Briefly,
No.
not
So,
much.
so Michelin came to Texas last year for the first time, and you know, I love Austin. There's a lot of great things about Austin. I do think it's wrong that we in Austin got the most Michelin stars out of any Texas city. I immediately, because I lived next to one of the Michelin starred restaurants in Austin, I immediately, like the night they were given out, booked a reservation at one of the places and ate there, and it was not good.
Dude, what's the place?
It was Hestia.
Oh yeah,
Have you been there?
I've not been there.
Okay, I ate there. It was not good. I think at half the price, it would have been good. At the price it was given, it was very meh. So I guess my point, like, you know, Houston does have really good food, and it's not like it needs good transit to have good food or anything like that, but there is a degree to which you just experience amnesia everywhere you go when you're driving because you're not really interacting with your environment at all.
Yeah, I think you're not interacting with the environment, and yeah, you're less likely to discover things unless you're discovering it through an algorithm or through Google Maps or something. I also remember reading something about, and maybe you have more to say to this, because it all ties into the Houston stuff as well as um, somebody I know did like some research on like the restaurant culture in Tokyo, and one of the things he said stood out was basically one, Tokyo has a lot of like small spaces. Basically, uh, so when you're renting out a place, or let's say you want to start a new concept restaurant, you don't have to like buy out like two floors or like one entire floor. You can start out really small because there are all these odd sized like places that you can buy that are like pretty small, and the leases in Tokyo are also very flexible in terms of what you can do to the place. Like you can like completely uh, like change it up and build your own thing, and so that sort of makes it much more easier and faster to like experiment with like a new concept, let's say.
Sure.
And in Houston, like I wonder if like the lack of zoning sort of in some way plays some role in like basically like the vibrancy of cuisine you sort of seen in Houston. I don't know.
There's a lot of strip mall space. Like you may not be able to get something that people will have a lot of foot traffic on, but you could probably find like an affordable strip mall retail area to open up a pho restaurant.
Yeah.
Is kind of what I get. Whereas in Austin, I just read the other day somebody said that there was like 99% retail occupancy in Austin, and it's very hard to get good, affordable space in Austin. And like maybe that's a good thing because like things are doing so well that it's like hard to find space, but it also seems like it seems very expensive to open up a business here.
That's interesting. I did not know about that, but it sort of makes sense from like anecdotally seeing that retail space does feel less in Austin um, compared to, yeah, like Houston, for example. I did not think about that.
Yeah, there's this weird phenomenon where it's like the best food, not the best food, but the best Asian food probably in Austin is in North Austin in the suburbs.
Yeah.
Where you got to like drive up there. It's not that different. I mean, Houston has more good Asian food in the center, but a lot of the good Asian food is in like Bel Air, which I guess is maybe not real. I don't know if it's a suburb per se, but it's like you got to drive 20 minutes from downtown to get there, 15 minutes.
Yeah. And it's its own sort of self-contained thing.
Yeah, it is awesome. And there is something amazing about it in a sense because it is kind of like a Chinatown in Houston. It is very Houston. There are a lot of strip malls, but there are also the signs are in like Chinese and Vietnamese.
Yeah.
And the food is very good. It is cool in a way.
It is cool. Surprisingly, it gets less attention compared to all the other Chinatowns. Probably because of because of the walkability thing. Like if you go to Chinatown in San Francisco or New York, it's much more.
It's like an urban Chinatown.
Yeah, yeah.
Even Seattle has this where it's like, there are some cool neighborhoods in Houston and Austin, but there's a contiguousness of neighborhoods in somewhere like Seattle where it's like, you've got downtown Seattle, and then you have International District, and then you have Capitol Hill, and then you have Belltown, and these are all places that are all connected to each other. Whereas in downtown Houston, if you want to get to Bel Air, like that's a drive.
Yeah.
But something I wanted to ask you was, in reading your piece, it seemed to me that you hadn't landed on this, or you didn't read this. Was Alon Levy has something called the Transit Costs Project. Have you heard of that?
I'm not, no.
So it's a really big white paper that this guy, Alon Levy, who's really well known in transit costs, whatever discussion, he did this comparative study of like all the really, really expensive transit projects in America with all of these relatively more efficient projects in other countries. And I don't even think he did China, which is interesting because you focus a lot on China. We keep bringing up China as this example of like, non-democratic country that was able to kind of affordably build all this high-speed rail. But you don't even have to look at China to get these really stunning comparisons because we're getting our ass beat by Turkey. Turkey over the past 20 years has built a ton of rail. Now, I don't think it's high speed rail, but still it's like metro rail systems.
Yeah.
So that's the thing about that I find kind of sad is like we don't even have to like copy, we don't need a dictatorship necessarily. Italy and Spain and Turkey are beating our ass.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing there is, since you mentioned it's not high-speed rail, is in America when for whatever reason, I guess maybe the reason is that it's so hard to for these big projects to take off that the one-off big project that comes by is always extremely charismatic, like the California high-speed rail or the Texas high-speed rail. These are like charismatic projects that sound really sexy. And because of that, there's not a lot of focus on like very much more simple projects that can be done, and like basically much more simpler wins that can be had because those are not charismatic and you don't get the political mileage from it. Like one simple example is like the easiest way to improve train transit would be to do something about the speed limit restrictions on like Amtrak versus freight, where freight is given priority or Amtrak because
You mean where they share?
yeah, where
Rail?
share the freight is given more priority or Amtrak, and so basically a big reason why there's a lot of delays in a lot of Amtrak is because like there's probably a freight train that's given more priority, and also I think freight can go at a higher speed in urban areas. Like that's one thing that if somebody's politically motivated enough to solve transit could probably like a politician could solve. The other thing is I think in Washington and basically the East Coast there were a couple of experiments in doing like these night trains, like trains that would run through the night and you sort of like get to like sleep on the train and like arrive at your destination the next night. Again, doesn't have to be high speed rail, but it could be like interesting and useful as an experiment. So I feel like there are a lot of like non-charismatic projects that could be successful that don't get a lot of attention because everybody's sort of always going for what sounds like what sounds the sexiest, what gets more political mileage type things.
More epic things.
More epic things.
Yeah, I've been saying like if we don't build light rail in Austin, probably one of the best things that we could do as a city is just double down on like I don't know how much the light rail costs, 7 billion or something crazy. Imagine if we put 1 billion towards just building the most world-class system of like bike trails and trees in Austin. Like Austin's not the most walkable city, but I feel like we could be like the most bikeable city, like in a matter of 5 to 10 years, if that kind of investment were made.
That makes sense, and that's probably something to be, yeah, a light trail. Sorry, I lost my.
Well, even if we build the light rail, it's not as if we're gonna be it's not we're not gonna be Manhattan or anything. Like it's just gonna provide the core network for a system where people are still gonna take the bus or drive or walk or bike to get to all the other the last miles.
Yeah, yeah. Even improving the bus system, like making the buses run on time, Like a friend who the works as an urban planner for the city of Austin told me that like Austin did some kind of rerouting of the bus routes that is like really popular among urban planners in like other cities as well. But I find it surprising because I don't find the buses running on time most of the time here. So it's surprising the like even like small improvements um
You're
uh
not feeling them.
I'm not feeling them, but it apparently people who are urban planners feel them probably because even small improvements are like hard to come by.
Well, I think my understanding of the Austin bus system, and I've been lucky to live in like pretty central parts of Austin, to where like I was just living downtown, and it was kind of funny that my downtown home in Austin really didn't have like a bus stop. So it was a very walkable area in Austin, but there was no bus, and that wouldn't have happened in like Seattle. Like you would have had probably a light rail and a bus option nearby. And so we're still kind of in this weird stage. My understanding of the Austin bus system is that there's like 5 or 6 routes, like the 801, the 10, like there's like 5 or 6 that are like really good and reliable, and then all the other ones are like, probably 15-minute headways, and like they're fine, right? But they're not great. Like I don't think anybody feels great about like I'm gonna go have to wait 15 minutes for a bus.
Yeah, um, that's true. I wonder if you ever looked into because when I was in Mexico City, there are those there are those high speed bus lanes, and it feels like such a for whatever reason I associate the bus lanes with South America because I feel like it's popular in like Argentina and Brazil as well. What is the do you know much about does it work? Is it and why is it so specific to those regions?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. So bus rapid transit is usually what it's called, and there's like this debate about like so there are some places that call their system bus rapid transit, but like it's not really. But I think Mexico City did a pretty good job where you got these stations, they're elevated, they look like train stations. Excuse me. And I wrote it. Did you write it?
I don't know, right?
And write it. So it is pretty good. My understanding, I was told by someone that it was meant to be a train system, though, and then they kind of had to settle for bus rapid transit for the bus rapid. Obviously, Mexico City also has trains. And yeah, when I wrote it, it was super busy and good, but you need dedicated bus right of way that a car can't get in front of you. So that I think in a lot of places in Austin, the cars and the buses are
Got it.
competing.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's basically like again, it's like it's a non-charismatic thing that is like you could possibly
Yeah, buses are like the least charismatic thing in Texas.
and you could probably prove it like a lot by not spending a lot of money, which probably explains why like places like Mexico City and Argentina have bus rapid transit because it's like a easier fix for uh, those cities that are like extremely populated and also there's like a lot of people commuting in from outside the city. So that makes sense. Um,
Yeah, bus rapid transit. I mean, and that's in Project Connect, which is in the Austin's like we're gonna get more bus rapid transit. Like for the routes that they can't build the train on, like I think like South Lamar to like North Austin, like there's gonna be a bus rapid transit lane. I think there is some trouble with like which ones are going to get true dedicated rights of way, because that really limits the effectiveness of the bus.
right. But the Project Connect thing reminds me of also. Um, I'd like to know what you think about like when the the I-35 expansion was announced. They had all these diagrams of parks that would sit on top of the I-35 and all of that. And I was skeptical but hopeful when those plans came out. But I think in the last 2 years they have like scraped all those plans to like have like greenery on
No,
it.
no, no, no. They're still in. So what you're talking about, they're called caps.
Uh-huh.
Caps and stitches. Stitches are like the smaller ones. And there was a big discussion about which ones we're going to build because they could have potentially built caps over the entirety of basically the central region of Austin. And then they were like, well, we can't afford that. So we're going to build them from, I believe, Cesar Chavez to 12th, something like that, and then maybe one more from near airport where airport hits I-35. And basically what we did was we decided we're going to pay for the elements that allow us to build those while we find the funding to actually build them. And then just in the past week, the Trump administration basically said that they're pooling the funding that they were going to give for one of those elements, the East Cesar Chavez to Fifth, basically the money just to build the platforms that those caps would sit on, which brings us back to the friction thing, where it's like,
Yeah.
we can't even trust our own government to help us build these projects because anything urbanist is fake and gay.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I think it comes back to that basically like lack of uncertainty, like lack of certainty about the future, and like these projects sort of need that to be efficient, and if that sort of money is used as sort of like a political gambit of some kind, then like yeah, these projects go through these cycles of uncertainty, and then you have to like replan, reallocate the budget. You have to do multiple cycles of that, and so by the end of it, what you get is sort of like these sort of like concrete island type things that are neither aesthetic nor very usable. So
What's the concrete island in this example?
basically like the when I think of concrete island, I'm thinking of the 35, the part of 35 that extends into San Antonio, which they reconstructed recently. But it's basically it's just concrete everywhere you look, but also the medians are not designed. They're not straight. They're like jutting out in areas, and like they're incomplete in like different places. So it definitely seems sort of like a mishmash of things that I don't know. Like the
Or
end
not
product,
aesthetic?
the end product looks neither aesthetic nor
Functional?
functional.
Yeah, I guess when you have a red party and a blue party, and the two parties don't agree that it's good to have things in cities that are not car centric, and you can't trust that from one administration to the next
Yeah,
that we're going to be able to fund these things. And yeah, it is a good example of of uncertainty. When the infrastructure bill was passed, I remember a lot of urbanists saying things like, what did they say? They were like, okay, this is a lot of money for highways, but at least we're getting a lot of money for trains and stuff too. You know, we're getting all these grants for light rail, and we're getting these grants for other like urban improvements, mobility improvements. But now we're in this situation where the Trump administration has decided that mobility improvements, anything that's not car centric, is fake and gay. And so we're not going to fund those things. Now we have the worst version of that bill where it's just $500 billion for highways and then a little bit of money maybe for a sidewalk.
yeah. The infrastructure bill is, I think, probably one of the more underrated legislations of the last like 20, 25 years. Like, I don't think it got, I think it got attention among urbanists, but I don't think it got enough attention among like the general public. And because there were a lot of projects in it, and a lot of it was rebuilding a lot of old infrastructure and like bridges that are like important for trade. And I guess that's the other interesting part is, like you think of what is the I forget the name of what is the bill that Roosevelt passed in 1936?
Is it the highway bill or something else?
not the highway bill, but it was sort of like
The New Deal?
yeah, essentially the
Sure.
New Deal. Yeah,
Yeah.
like the New Deal was sort of like focused on like social welfare and all of that, while
Give people jobs to build stuff.
yeah, yeah. While I think the infrastructure bill was like heavily focused on, like basically trade in some ways. Like it was very focused on like we need to get these bridges up and running because it's an important trade route from a port, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but it sort of shows how far things have come where sort of like social welfare is not, it's sort of like abstracted away.
Well, that's interesting because maybe it's because Biden couldn't really run on it as a New Deal because the New Deal is communist, like or whatever. To the other side, it's you can't really run on things as a social welfare program, but you can run on it as infrastructure. The problem with doing that is then the next administration can come in and be like, well, all right, we're really going to tear away everything in this that is not, perceived to be necessary, I guess.
Yeah, and nobody really cares because they'd never really cared to begin with.
Yeah. And this brings me to something that is my number one pet peeve about general politics in America is that if there's something that Americans love to say, it's both sides are the same. Both sides are the same, right? Well, I can tell you that only like this is a very tangible difference between Republicans and Democrats. A Kamala Harris administration, for whatever you think about Kamala Harris, I don't think that she would be pulling funding for light rail and, highway parks and stuff like that. But to the average person, that they were always the same anyway, they don't even notice, they don't even feel invested in the fact that Trump took these things away.
Yeah, and it's sort of and I don't know what the sort of like future of these sort of projects like the light rail or like urban city projects is. It seems like it's going to be more private than sort of a government funded mode, and I don't know if there is enough sort of private motivation to do those things in the first place.
You're saying like Brightline, stuff like that?
Yeah, Brightline, maybe private light rail instead of like government funded light rail.
Does
Because
that even exist? I don't know.
I think it exists in like
Maybe another country that I'm not aware of. Well, I mean, like there are public-private partnerships
Yeah.
in Japan and stuff.
yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, the Japanese high speed rail is like what, 4 or 5 separate divisions, and all of them are, I think, public private partnerships and of like varying degrees. So I think it does exist, and it is possible, and probably it is probably the future forward in like a country where the government is like actively defunding most government funded infrastructure projects.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. It's. I think it's kind of like a new green field for Americans in general, and I'm sure. I think. I'm sure there's like an opportunity as well as sort of risks to that. I'm not sure what those are.
Yeah, I will. I don't care who builds it. Like somebody the other day was saying, like I will take a dictator if they build high speed rail. And I mean, I wouldn't go that. I don't want a dictator, right? But it does strike me that with Trump, sometimes it does feel like we're getting all of the cons of a dictator with none of the benefits, because it's like at least with Xi Jinping, it's like he's a dictator. You probably don't have a lot of free speech rights. There's all these problems. There are many ways in which you are not free, but at least you get the world's biggest high-speed rail system over the past 20 years. I mean, Xi himself didn't do all of that, but you get what I'm saying. Whereas with Trump, it feels like what we get is a few more lanes on our highways, widespread like ICE, raiding daycares to, take Abuelita and send her, back to Guatemala, even if she wasn't from there. Like, I wouldn't love, but at least it would be a pro if the rightists in America were like very pro infrastructure. And to me, it's like, are we actually making America great again? Like, can we get America to actually build anything, or are we just want to own the libs?
I uh, I remember reading a profile about Xi Jinping and his father, and it was like this weird profile of how Xi Jinping's father was also like a Communist Party member who was sort of uh, like basically I think trialed by the party or something, and sort of like put through a lot of suffering. Like Xi Jinping was also sort of put through it, and the theory of the sort of paper is that that is sort of like how Chinese politics works, where even though it's autocratic, you sort of like take these sort of prodigious politicians and sort of put them through a lot of suffering, which sort of enhances their commitment to the party. And I can kind of see that, like, as in you're sort of committed to the project of the party instead of your personal project. While I think the American equivalent is that, like the adage that everybody in America is like is somebody who's waiting to be rich, like somebody who's not yet a millionaire. I think I forget what the Mark Twain quote was, but it was something.
Everybody's a temporarily
Ev-
embarrassed
yeah,
millionaire.
temporarily embarrassed millionaire.
What ambitious thing are the Republicans aiming to build? Like, they're building like a giant ballroom
Oh
attached to
yeah,
the White House.
I saw that.
Are we supposed to be excited about that? I mean, maybe they're doing that with private funds. I don't know.
I mean, even the ballroom didn't look that good. It just looked like one of those Dallas houses that the one of the Dallas new built McMansions, and that's what the ballroom looked like. And I think it was the architect is a guy who mainly did a lot of buildings for like churches and stuff. So
You
like
actually looked into it, and that's
yeah, yeah, like
oh,
the
interesting.
main architect guy is like somebody who builds sort of buildings for churches. And I don't even know if he builds churches outright, like uh, just sort of church affiliated projects.
Like, that's what we're able to build now.
Yeah.
That's what we're good at building in America. We can build sprawly McMansions as far as the eye can see, and maybe that is just like that's what we've optimized our society to build. Like, it's like in Houston, I guess there is something to be said for the fact that if you can afford a $300,000 mortgage in Houston, you can probably get some kind of McMansion in a suburb.
Can you still do that? I thought like Houston got much more expensive.
It probably got a little bit more expensive. Like, maybe that number is 500,000 now or something. But like, a lot of people can, like, a married couple who is both working can save up
Yeah.
$30,000 and put a down payment on that.
Yeah. And honestly, I have kind of like sort of resigned myself to the feeling that it feels like that is what most people want. Like the majority sort of wants, like you earlier said, that is sort of like the cultural norm, and so that is what people want. Like people, I think most people here sort of see trains or walking as something that they do 2 weeks when they go to Europe in the summer, and then once they're back, you sort of want to like the American dream is if that still exists, is still sort of like the McMansion in the suburb. Although now I think instead of McMansions, they're usually data centers in the suburbs. So I don't know how long that dream is going to be there, but I've sort of resigned myself to the feeling that that's how things are. But I know that's not you, and I respect that.
No. I have no delusions that, we're going to wake up tomorrow and people are going to be like, I really like Hong Kong style development and we need that here. Like, I understand that's not going to happen. My issue is, like, I would like people to think a little more about, are your preferences actually informed, right? Because a lot of the people who think that that is the ideal, they don't think that way because they've tried all the possible options, and then they've determined that that is what they want. it's just what they have been kind of. It's like it's the status quo, and that's okay. The thing is that in America we're always going to have this periphery around cities with less used land in which to build McMansions and car dependent suburbs. Like that is never going to go away. Um, and people always have the right, I think, to do that. The issue is that like, what do we do in the cities that are more than that? And why are we restricting ourselves and holding ourselves back?
Yeah, I guess. What do you think about um, the DC takeover? Because it feels like obviously the politics of it is strange, but um, again, like I was in Mexico City recently, and I was reading about how like Claudia Sheinbaum, who is the current prime minister, she was a mayor of Mexico City from I think 2018 2022, and the homicide rate in Mexico City reduced from like something like 24 per 100,000 to like 8 per 100,000, and that's 8 per 100,000 is around the same as like New York City, and
She did that with the takeover of the city, federal takeover.
well, that part is kind of shady because there's like a lot of
I think, to be fair, sorry,
Yeah.
I don't want to sound stupid. I do think Mexico City is already a federally administered.
yeah, it is federally administered, and there's also a lot of like American. I'm sure there's a lot of like CIA presence. I tried to look into this, and there's like vague sort of suggestions of like Claudia Sheinbaum like got help from like the American spy agencies based on like locations and like how to like find these
Like cartel
cartels and
people and
stuff.
everything?
Yeah,
Okay.
cartels in Mexico City and stuff like that. So I'm sure there was a lot of like extrajudicial stuff, but it does like as a traveler, like Mexico City it feels pretty safe.
Yeah.
And
But how does this tie back to DC?
because the murder rate in DC is like 27 per 100,000 people, which is not to say that I would feel unsafe in DC, but but if you're sort of like looking at it as like this is the capital city, and when compared to other capital cities, it looks kind of embarrassing. So we should do
I
some.
haven't looked at the stats. I know somebody said that it is not even in the top 10 most dangerous major cities in the
In
U.S.
the U.S.,
so
that's true because because there's like I think Chicago, which is like 34
like St.
or something.
Louis and
Yeah, Chicago, St. Louis,
Baltimore.
yeah.
Well, that's fine. Like, I'm not in theory against trying to make DC safer, and I do think there's been a failing of liberals to figure out a way to like, yeah, I've always said like defund the police. The whole movement was very stupid. It's a dumb headline, and it's also that just probably not a real policy, right? But do I feel comfortable with Trump himself being the one doing this? Like, I just don't really trust him to be the guy. And then the problem is that he's also like, well, we're also going to look at New York City and Baltimore and Chicago and all these other cities. Like, are we looking at a future in which the federal government is sending in strike forces to all the major U.S. cities and like trying to strong arm like Democratic run cities? Like, I don't love that.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the motivations are like nefarious and not the, but it's also the cities themselves have sort of failed themselves.
They have not covered themselves in
Yeah,
glory.
like this is sort of as much on Trump as it is on the cities, because like they sort of like a lot of the cities seem to be holding on to some idea of like American exceptionalism or cosmopolitanism that does not exist. Like if people don't feel safe, if there are like car break-ins, then and like your day-to-day life is sort of like filled with low-grade anxiety, then
But the problem
that's
is
not-
like New York City's pretty safe.
yeah, it is safe, but again, I'm comparing it to like international.
DC might not be. I don't know DC statistics.
I'm comparing it to like international cities.
Yeah, like
and,
Europe or Asia.
Yeah, and now even Mexico City is why I'm like it's like
But Mexico City may be exceptional for Mexico because I think if you like went to the rest
it
of
is
Mexico,
It is definitely exceptional for Mexico, and I think the rest of Mexico probably ranks in like I think the top 10 for
I don't want to be
the
in
whole,
Tijuana, you know what I mean?
yeah, in the whole world for homicide. But it's still like it's kind of embarrassing to be in supposedly a rich country and have those kind of problems, and that has only sort of like exaggerated in the last 5 6 years post pandemic.
Yeah, so my understanding is that if you looked at the past 30, 40 years, you'd see like pretty much violent crime going down, 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 down. Pandemic spike back up a little bit,
Yeah,
moderate a bit. I'm not trying to minimize it, but it goes back up. No, no, I don't think it goes back up to like 80s or 70s or what, whenever it was at its peak, but it does go back up, and then it's been trending down. I think again, like I think you'll see this in a lot of cities, and so. I mean, I don't know. Like, is Trump going to succeed in making DC safer? Maybe. Is it a failure of liberals that we have not been able to offer a safer vision of our cities? Yeah, probably. Like, we probably should have done more and probably not have rallied behind defund the police in 2020 because that was a stupid,
yeah,
untenable. Like, not only, like, it was just a completely impractical approach.
yeah. Definitely alienated a lot of people there, like just normal people there as well.
Yeah, like in the same way that we don't look at other countries whenever we're devising our transit systems and think like, okay, they're able to build trains, like why don't we just copy them? We also have this stupid American exceptionalism, even as liberals, where we think instead of thinking how can we make police more safer, more safe, more accountable, we come up with a totally new idea, which is defund and get rid of police, and it's like, where did you get that idea? Nobody's doing that.
Yeah,
Your country, like, Sweden is not doing that. Japan is not doing that. Cuba is not doing that. Why do you think it's a good idea to do that?
yeah. But I mean, kind of goes back to the charismatic projects thing of like that's like the thing that gets most attention from the media or like if you're
You
online.
rally behind it.
Yeah, it's both rage bait and like something that can go viral, and that's not exactly where policy should come from.
An average American liberal leaning person cannot identify with maybe we should pay cops a little bit more and hold them to higher account. That's an incrementalist approach. It's not sexy. It doesn't, I think a lot of American progressives, at least at their base, think of themselves as like little punk rockers where they're going to do like the most punk rock idea, which is like get rid of the police, man, or abolish prisons. And it's like, yeah, those are sexy ideas. They're also not possible.
Yeah, or not possible in our.
It might be possible in 2234.
And yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly opposed to the idea if it had some sort of an actual plan of like this is how it's gonna happen, but I don't think that exists either.
You think we're going to get rid of police in Chicago? New Orleans?
But to come back to the transit thing, did you try the cable cars in Mexico City?
The only ones that I know about are the ones that are like in the hood. In I forgot the name of the neighborhood. I actually really wanted to.
Was it like Tepito? No, it was not Tepito. It was like South.
Yeah, it's somewhere like in the bar, in the for lack of a better word, favela. And I've been told by several people like I knew a girl. She said she got like robbed when she was there. She's Mexican, so I would go do it. I would definitely do it. I kind of want like a Mexican friend to go with me.
Yeah.
They look really cool.
Yeah. I wondered like how many like I want to find more odd transit examples like that. I feel like the cable cars exist in Switzerland also. I think I've seen those. But and the Boeing 747 in Japan is like another odd example. Like I want to find more sort of like transit that is like specific to the region, because often when we think about transit, we sort of like there are these general purpose technologies that exist like trains, planes, and like you sort of like try to imagine that existing in your city. But what if you sort of like from first principles build a particular technology or like adopted a technology for the area, which
Yeah.
also that is kind of the case with the Chinese high-speed rail, where all the while most places in Europe, I think most of the trains are either uh, German or French. Like like most companies are based in Germany or France. Then in a lot of other places, Japan exports a lot of their trains, while China basically built theirs up, ground up, and they saved a lot of money because they sort of like adopted the existing train gauges they have to fit high
High-speed
speed
rail.
rail. And so they save a lot of money there. So they sort of like build it from first principles where they build it specific to their region. And because of that, the cost was much lesser.
Well, it's funny. We do that sometimes here. Like everybody in Austin who doesn't really know what they're talking about likes to shit on the commuter rail that exists here, the Red Line. They're like, oh, they built this useless train that like I never use, and like without realizing that the whole reason that train exists is because it was built on existing rail that the city or Cap Metro, which is the like the transit organization, owned, and so the purpose of it was never to be like a really good metro rail system that serves the core of the city because it was just an existing rail line. They're like, oh, we can build a commuter rail here, and it'll probably get more useful
Yeah,
eventually.
it's a good test to
Yeah.
see if people use it. And yeah, I think that's a great way to go about something like that. It's unfortunate that it's got bogged down in so much of the Texas politics in the last year or two. All the stuff you mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it's hard to build. It's hard to build shit here. Um, Sachin, anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think
You want to tell people where to find you, how to find you?
yeah, you can find me on Substack. I have a Substack that I write weekly called Summer Lightning. And I mostly write essays on.
You don't really write about this stuff.
I write about this stuff once in a while, but not my main beat, I guess. Yeah. So
What would you say your main beat is?
I guess it's a combination of. I write a bit about sort of cities and urbanism, and a bit of personal essays, and a bit about like technology, which is what I previously worked in. So,
No fiction.
I do write fiction, but not usually in my newsletter. I usually publish it elsewhere in like small magazines and stuff.
Fanfiction.com.
Yes, fanfiction.com.
So no like horny elves or
Yeah.
fairies or
Horny elves.
there's a lot of money in that now. Have you considered pivoting?
Well, maybe I should. Maybe I should do like a fantasy high-speed rail romance that could sell among a specific niche.
There's at least 100 readers out there who will pay $5 a month for fairies getting railed on high speed rail. Anyway, thanks, fan. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was nice.